Hey, Ron, before we get started,
Yep.
notice that the council meeting in public. Why do they meet in public and the other boards have to meet in Zoom?
We don't have to meet in Zoom. It's easier to meet in
When
Zoom.
there's extension is. So we can meet in town hall, couldn't we?
Well, we can talk about that depending on what happens with the executive order at the end of next week. We can certainly do a hybrid meeting as the council does. It's just more complicated. And you need more staff to run that type of a meeting. We need IT to help us.
But if everybody could meet in town hall, it wouldn't need to be a hybrid meeting, right?
I'll see you later.
No, if the executive
Hans.
order is still in place, you need to have the public able to meet or to join the meeting remotely. So that's the issue. So if the executive order is extended, we can certainly have the board meet in person, but you would still have to offer that opportunity for the public to attend via Zoom.
Okay, thanks.
Yep.
Sounds complicated.
Well, I mean, the council does it. It's just, like I said, it is more complicated. You need more staff to make it work. And occasionally there's glitches if you've watched council meetings where they're trying to talk with people in the room and also on Zoom. It can get a little tricky.
Ron, was there a technical review meeting yesterday?
Yes.
There was something. That wasn't on Zoom, was it? I went to see if I could get it. I couldn't find a link to it.
It was on Zoom.
Yeah.
Yep, the link was on the agenda, and you can probably, if you wanted to watch it, it was also on YouTube, so you should be able to search it.
Okay, thanks.
Yep.
Paul, I like where you are tonight.
I'm sorry, say that again?
I like where you are tonight.
Yeah. That's down in Westerly, Watch Hill. Feels like we're getting the kind of weather back that makes me wish I were there.
Yeah.
Hot, humid weather.
Right.
Okay, I just registered 6 p.m. on my computer, so I would like to call this meeting to order. This is a regular meeting of the Planning Board, and the first item on the agenda, I'm sorry, we have to call the roll first. Mr. Pirrick?
Present.
Mr. Chumo?
Present.
Mrs. Owen?
Present.
Mr. Weber?
Present.
Mr. Fenton?
Here.
Mr. Nash?
Yeah.
And I am here. The first item on our agenda is the approval of the minutes of June 9th, our regular planning board meeting. May I have a motion to approve these minutes?
So
So
moved.
moved.
Second.
Motion's made and seconded to approve the minutes of the June 9th regular meeting. Is there any comment or discussion on these minutes? All those in favor of approving, say aye. Show your hands, please.
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Any opposed? Say nay. The minutes are approved. Second item on the, excuse me, the second item on the agenda is correspondence. We have 2 items of correspondence. First item is a decision of the Zoning Board of Review, sitting as the Planning Board of Appeals, dated June 9th, 2021. Concerning the Haran Building Company Master Plan Approval, proposed subdivision, plat 129, lot 53, 208 Howland Avenue. May I have a motion to receive this
So
correspondence?
moved.
Second.
Motion's made and seconded to receive this correspondence. Is there any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Show your hand, please.
Aye.
Any opposed? That item is received. The second item is a letter to the planning board from Matthew H. Lees, Esquire, dated July 7th, 2021, regarding an application of Haran Building Company, 208 Howland Avenue, Plat 129, Lot 53, the Howland Farm property. May I have a motion to receive this correspondence?
I'll move, Bill Nash.
second,
Motion is made and seconded to receive this correspondence. Is there any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Please show your hand.
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The correspondence is received. Before we leave this item and go to the next one, I would like to point out that we should fix a time or discuss when we wish to deal with this issue. Do we want to deal with it at our next meeting, or as we have already scheduled a meeting on August 17th for this, do we want to keep that date for this discussion? And before we decide that, I would like to ask the solicitor if they could explain or clarify exactly what happened here.
Marissa is on the line, so I'll ask her to step in, and Chris McNally is recused on this item.
Okay,
That's correct.
hi Marissa,
Good evening.
how are you?
Good. Good to
Good.
see everyone.
So did you hear my comment before you came online here? Okay, so could you explain exactly what happened here?
Sure. So the planning board made its final decision, and 2 or 3 objecting parties took an appeal of that final decision to the Planning Board of Appeals, which is the panel of members of the zoning board. And that hearing went forward. There was oral argument from all parties, and ultimately the Planning Board of Appeals decided to remand the matter back to you for further consideration on certain issues, including whether approval of fewer lots than what the applicant is seeking would be appropriate, and to otherwise correct the errors, the prejudicial and clear errors that they saw as part of your deliberations and decision process. And they also included instructions in their decision that the planning board rehear the application. So that's where we are now. The matter is on remand, which means it's back to you for deliberation and decision again. And it's my understanding, based on communications with Ron, that and my review of the letter from attorney Matt Lees, that there is some question about what exactly the scope of that remand is. So I'm happy to talk about it tonight. If you want a memo on it, I could provide that before the August 17th meeting. However you want to go forward tonight, I'm happy to help.
If the members of the board would like to keep the August 17th date for this discussion, then I would suggest we do that and ask Marissa to indeed provide that memo discussing this, please. Is that the will of the board? Everyone okay with that? Any comments?
Yeah, Paul,
Yes, Bill.
just remind me again how we ended up with the August 17th date.
It was polled by Ron.
Yep, we polled everyone, and that was the date that seemed to work best for most. I
Okay.
don't know if you were perhaps one that wasn't available, Rita, or do you remember if
I think I did, now that I recall it. I just lost track of all the doodle polls. I do a lot
Yeah,
of them,
it
so,
was, that was definitely the date that worked best for most.
okay, thank you.
So any other comments?
Mr. Chairman, Attorney Gerard Galvin has his hand raised. Do you wish to let him speak?
Sure, let's hear what he has to say.
ahead.
Good evening. Good evening, Mr. Chair. Can you hear me?
I do, but I wish to point out that we are not yet discussing the issues in this matter. We're simply deciding when to meet on it.
And I understand that. I think the only thing I want to clarify is on August 17th, is that going to be to clarify the issues, or are you expecting to proceed to hear it? I just want to clarify whether we're proceeding that night and have witnesses, et cetera, or we're just going to clarify your process on that night?
I'm hoping that the memo that the acting solicitor provides to us will give us the clarification, and we fully intend to proceed with deliberations on the matter on the 17th.
And so just so
Well-
I'm clear, the idea, at least in my mind, is that we would go ahead and advertise that as a public hearing. And Marissa can, I guess, chime in here, but I think it would be appropriate to make sure that that's advertised so the board would be able to proceed that night if it wishes to with a public hearing.
I agree.
I'm good with that.
Mr. Chairman, Attorney Matt Lees has his hand raised. Do you wish to allow him to speak?
Yes, with the same proviso.
Good evening, Mr. Chair, members of the board. Matt Lees representing Robert M. Sylvia. As indicated in my letter, the zoning board decision requires the applicant to resubmit plans with additional information on them regarding land development constraints on a conventional plan. And I quoted the provisions of the decision that relate to that subject. I won't repeat them, but it would seem premature to move forward with a potential hearing on the master plan until we've received those revised plans from the applicant. The technical review committee has had a chance to review them, and then at that point, it would seem more appropriate to schedule a special meeting. But if we're preparing witnesses and everybody's getting ready to have a hearing, which would require quite a bit of time and work, it would seem premature to do that until the zoning board decision has been complied with.
Mr. Lees, I will request the acting solicitor to include commentary on that in her memo. And if she deems that it's premature, we will certainly request the required drawings and plans from the applicant. If she does not agree with that, we will move forward.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else, Ron?
Nope. No.
So is everyone okay with dealing with this issue on the 17th rather, and having the acting solicitor submit a memo on this topic? Everyone okay with that?
I'm fine with that.
I
Yes, Art.
I don't want to get technically into this stuff, but I want to go back to the reason I voted against it. The reason I voted against it is because I thought we had left the parameters of what a master plan review is, and I stand on it. You do not need a technical review committee before we have a master plan consideration, because it is a conceptual idea without any supporting documents that normally you would get at the preliminary point. What I was concerned about is we had slid out of master plan review into preliminary plan, and I was not comfortable with that. So when I looked at the review of what the zoning board's objection was, it did not declare any element there of anything related to that. It was something else that they hung their hat on. So I just want to be clear about my objection then and now, that I think master plan is definitely a part of the development plan review process, and it must be contained within its boundaries. And then we move on to the other two phases later. As we
I
develop.
invite you to raise those points on the 17th as well.
Okay.
Any other comments? Everyone's okay with dealing with the Howland Avenue application on August 17th as a public hearing? Do we need a motion, or can we just declare it so?
Why don't you go ahead and make a motion and vote?
May I have a motion to
So
deal
moved.
with the Howland application
So
on
moved.
August 17th?
So moved.
Second.
A motion's made and seconded to address the Howland application on August 17th at a special meeting. Is there any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Please show your hand.
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion passes. Thank you.
Thanks. Thanks, Marissa.
Thank you, Marissa.
Thank you, Marissa.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good night.
The next item on the agenda is any continuances, and we have quite a few this evening. Items 4A, 4B, and 4C will be continued, primarily because of examinations were not completed or at the request of the applicant. And items 5A and 5B will be continued because we have not yet received the required feedback info from the solicitor. So is there anyone here to speak on item 4A? Let me read the item first. 4A, public hearing, application of Jack Gullison for development plan review, including requests for waivers from certain design standards of the Middletown Rules and Regulations regarding the subdivision and development of land, section 521, for construction of a new commercial building to include a 17-room hotel with a restaurant and associated site work located on property identified as 59 Aquidneck Avenue, Assessors Plat 115 SE, Lot 169. Is there anyone here to speak? Mr.
Yes,
Lynch?
Mr. Chairman, Jay Lynch on behalf of the applicant.
Good evening, Mr. Lynch.
Good evening. We completed our TRC review yesterday. It's my understanding that the board prefers to renotice the abutters because of the length of time that this has been pending.
That's correct.
So it's my understanding that there's going to be a renotice again to the abutters and will be continued to the August meeting.
That's correct. That is correct.
We have no objection to that.
Thank you. So may I have a motion to continue this item to the August 11th meeting?
So moved.
Moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Motion is made and seconded to move item 4A to the August 11th meeting. Is there any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Please show your hand.
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That item is moved and continued to the August 11th meeting. Item 4B. Town council requests that the planning board research adopting an ordinance requiring Esplanade-style sidewalks. Consider recommending ordinance language to the town council. This is one of the items where we have not received the updated feedback. So may I have a motion to continue this to the August 11th meeting?
So moved.
Second.
Motion is made and seconded to continue this item to the August 11th meeting. Is there any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Raise your hand. Any opposed? The motion passes. And item 4B is continued to the August 11th meeting. Item 4C, discuss policy for removing items that are repeatedly continued from the planning board agenda. This is another item where we have not yet received the feedback from the solicitor. And so recommend that we continue this to the August 11th meeting. May I have a motion to continue item 4C?
So moved.
August 11th meeting.
Second.
Motion is made and
Second.
seconded. Is there any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Show your
Aye.
hand, please.
Aye.
Opposed? Any opposed? The motion, Art, are you opposing it?
No,
No, okay,
just a little slow getting my hand up to the first.
okay. Okay, the motion passes. The next item to be continued is item 5A, a public hearing, application of Juan Campos for preliminary plan approval of a 5-lot subdivision, including extension of an existing town road. The property is located at the end of Serenity Drive with frontage also on Maidford River Road and is identified as tax assessors plat 120, lots 68A and 68B. Is there anyone here to speak on this item?
Yes, Russ Jackson is on.
Mr. Jackson, good evening.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Can you hear me?
Yes,
Yes.
Great. Yeah, so this application, we attended 2 meetings earlier this week, one with the Conservation Commission and yesterday morning with the TRC. And we've got some good constructive feedback. The matter is also being referred to Crossman Engineering. So we have some work to do before we're ready to be in front of the planning board for preliminary plan approval, a hearing on that matter. So we have no objection to this being continued to the August meeting.
Mr. Jackson, do you want to continue to the August meeting, or do you think you would need more time?
It's hard to say at this point, but in an abundance of caution, I did speak to my clients today that in all likelihood, we would probably be reached in September. It's unclear how long the time is going to take for us to get feedback from Crossman, for Northeast engineers to implement those changes, for us to get back in front of the Conservation Commission and TRC and get sign off. So I think September would be appropriate.
Okay, does anyone know the date of the September meeting?
September 8th.
September 8th?
Yep.
Okay, so may I have a motion to continue item?
Before we do, I have just a question before we continue this. Do we need to go out there and look at this? We've already looked at this once, I think. Do we need to go out and have a site visit for this property?
Would members of the board like to do a site visit on this?
Again, we've done one, right? We've already done one.
Yes,
We had one.
it might
We
be a
had
good
one,
idea to
we had
review.
one a while ago. I recall that. Art may have missed that. I don't know, but.
I
Yes,
don't see the
BJ?
need.
I'll just throw it out.
I was going to say, I think it might be a good idea to review this because it's been a while since we did hear this.
Ron, why don't you schedule a site visit for this? We're going to continue it to the September 9th, what is it, 8th?
8th.
To the September 8th meeting, so we have time to do a site visit.
Thank you.
Okay, may I have a motion to continue item 5A to the September 8th meeting?
So moved.
Do I have a second? Motion is made and seconded to continue item 5A to the September 8th meeting. Is there any discussion? Ron will poll us for a site visit. All those in favor, please say aye. Show your hands.
Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Art, you're slow.
Yeah,
You oppose it?
I think Art has a slow connection tonight.
My hand goes up slow. I haven't had anything to eat in days now.
Okay, the motion passes and item 5A is continued to the September 8th meeting, and Ron will poll us for a site visit date.
Thank you.
The next item, thank you, Mr. Jackson. The next item to be continued is item 5B, a public hearing application of Newport Carval's, care of Blake Henderson, for development plan review, including requests for waivers from certain design standards of the Middletown Rules and Regulations regarding the subdivision and development of land, section 521, for construction of a new commercial building and site work for an auto storage building. Property is located at 55 John Clark Road, plat 115, lot 33. Is Mr. Galvin going to speak on this?
He is.
Good evening, Mr. Chair. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Good evening.
Okay. Yes, we attended the TRC meeting yesterday morning. We did receive a unanimous vote to recommend it before the planning board. However, an issue arose with Mr. Costa about whether or not this plan should be reviewed by the Conservation Commission. And so I'm still having that discussion. If we need to apply for a special use permit and have it reviewed by that commission, we hope to do that on August 9th. And so we are requesting that this agenda item be moved to August 11th, and hopefully we'll be prepared to go at that point.
Okay. May I have a motion to continue item 5B to the August 11th meeting?
Motion made.
So moved.
Second.
And do I have a second?
Second.
Motion is made and seconded to continue item 5B to the August 11th meeting. Is there any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye. Show your hands, please.
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes, and item 5B is continued to the August 11th meeting.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Galvin. The next item on the agenda is item 5C. Request of the Zoning Board of Review for a recommendation on an application of On the Pond LLC for a special use permit to allow construction of a deck in Zone 1 of the Watershed Protection District. Property is located at 116 Aquidneck Avenue, Plat 115 SE, lots 135 and 136. Mr. Martland, good evening. I think you're muted.
Good evening.
Good evening.
How are you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board? Thank you. I'm here representing On the Pond LLC and Diego's Middletown on this petition. The property is located, as you may know, on 116 Aquidneck Avenue, Plat 115 Southeast lots. It's actually two tax lots, 135 and 136. It's utilized as essentially one property. And for some reason, it's still listed as two tax lots. On the back of the building, the existing building and restaurant, there is a deck, and the deck that's located on the rear of the facility is is in some state of disrepair. And my client, Diego's, its principal, Scott Kermel, they want to rebuild the deck. In connection with that, they wanted to cover a portion of the deck with a roof. And while they were doing that, wanted to add some small deck space for the third floor. The property itself is obviously located in the Watershed Protection District. And so, anything we do here is subject to a special use permit. And we are referred to this board for an advisory opinion. Now, the entirety of the lot is essentially covered. It's either with building or parking area. The existing deck, as you can see on the site plan, is located at the rear of the building. In connection with the proposal, there is a slight increase of the footprint over the deck for the roof located on the northwesterly portion of the deck. It's approximately a 6-inch increase to the west and a 6-inch increase to the north. Otherwise, it's the same size, completely the same size deck being rebuilt in the same location. And then on the third floor, there is a small mezzanine deck that opens out. We're here for the issue dealing with the referral for the Watershed Protection District. Obviously, there's no change of use here. I don't see any significant. There's no change to the grading. No change really to the water runoff or anything of that nature. This is really just rebuilding in place, the deck and the addition of a small deck up top. Mike Russell has developed the site plan. Now, I believe Mike had another meeting and was trying to get back to the office. I'm not sure if he's had an opportunity to log on. Ron, do you know if Mike is with us yet?
I don't see him yet, no.
Okay. Yeah, I'm prepared to, try to answer any questions that the board may have relative to this, but I don't see this as having any impact on the watershed protection district that doesn't already exist.
Dave, Spencer McComb is raising his hand. Is he on this project?
He is.
All
Spencer
right,
is.
I'll allow him to speak then.
Okay.
Go ahead, Spencer.
Hi, guys. I just was letting you know I'm here. If there's any questions about the architectural changes that are happening, I have some pictures of the existing and an elevation of the rear, if anyone's interested in that.
I'd like to see it.
Yeah, Spence, if you could just walk through those existing conditions and what you're proposing.
I'm going to promote him to a panelist so he can share his screen. Which means I have to stop sharing my screen. So Spencer, if you're able to share your screen, feel free to go ahead and do that.
Hopefully you can hear me and see my screen now.
Yep.
This is a zoom in of that larger site plan that we were just looking at. The David called this a third floor deck, but we all know that the site slopes down a whole story. So really when you're entering, this would be the second floor deck and the first floor deck is existing. If I could just show you, just so everyone remembers what it looks like. This is the rear of what's going on now. So you can probably see this sort of disrepair. Probably maybe can't see it, but there's awkward double steps to multiple levels here. That creates a very awkward situation for ADA and patrons of a public establishment, especially that have been drinking, to have these sort of steps on these tiny decks that oscillate and then get bigger on this side. So the idea was to redesign this so that it made a lot more sense, and maybe just seeing the exterior elevations, there's the existing and then the proposed. So now we have a deck that sits level all the way across. It gets a little bigger like the existing footprint did. And to just make sense of this architecturally, we have a small roof line that just sort of makes this feel a little bit more enclosed, nicer, more detailed, more intimate. Obviously, if it's raining or misting out, you could sit out here. The roof continues over the whole deck. And one of the reasons why this is inset is because that's where the line of the yard setback sits. So we've designed this all around to be the most compliant we possibly could be. So we're not expanding a deck. This would be by right because it's inside of the setback. So really all we're asking for from a zoning standpoint is this roof, because this footprint is already established. It'll be demolished. So when it gets rebuilt, putting it back same spot. But really we're just talking about this side of this roof is really the only zoning request that would be a change from previously. And then over here, the roof continues. What it allows is a first floor outdoor seating area that's covered. And then the second floor does have that open area as well. So a lot of times if it's really sunny, it's a little uncomfortable to be out there. And so that allows them a little bit of shade for people that are sitting under there. We have some brackets to make it look nice and so on. But I think it's really taking an eyesore, I would say sketchy, structurally built back porch and making it really structurally sound as well as aesthetically pleasing to the back of the building. And I will stop staring my screen now. Let's see.
Before I open it up to members of the planning board, I have just a couple of questions of clarification.
Sure.
What is a cheek wall?
A cheek wall? Cheek wall's a small half wall that sits right here. So this railing, instead of being open the whole way, returns solid with shingles so that this roof line can sit into it. Because if this was all open railing, that would be an awkward architectural condition.
So it's just a half wall, is that it?
That's it.
Okay. My second question is, when I look at the north elevation, I notice that you're showing it to be, it looks like 1 foot 8 inches beyond the yard setback. Does that overhang exist now, or is that new, going beyond the yard setback?
So the deck is exactly in the same position. The roof extends just a little bit beyond that. That's the 6 inches that David was talking about of the expanded footprint. And the only reason is because the eaves of the roof overhang the deck just that slightly, which is kind of a normal architectural scenario.
But the first floor or second floor deck, whatever you call it, the lower one, that already extends beyond the setback line?
It does just in this area. Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Because
okay, any other questions or comments from planning board members?
Yes.
I have a question.
BJ and then Art.
Okay, thank you. I am interested in the runoff from the roof. How is that going to be handled?
We actually weren't addressing the runoff from the main roof at all. Are you talking about this roof, this lower
No,
roof?
the lower roof. The new one.
We don't have gutters on it, so we're just letting it drip from where it sits.
Oh, would that be a problem?
It's all impervious pavement all around it, so it's not really going to do anything other than let the water that was dripping down there, do it again.
Oh.
I don't think it'll be a problem.
Oh. But it could.
Well, you all said, BJ?
Yes, thank you.
Art?
I note on the planner's memo, there are 3 questions relative to stormwater. And it says the applicant should be asked, so I think I'm going to ask. The applicant should be asked to describe how stormwater in the property will be addressed. The owner is required to comply with the provisions of the town stormwater management ordinance, chapter 153, and construction site runoff and erosion control ordinance, chapter 151. Now, I don't think your engineer is available to answer these questions, but that's one question. The other one is the applicant should be asked to describe any potential sources of pollution existing on proposed on the property. And finally, the applicant should be asked to describe how surface water will be directed away from zone 1 if possible. So those are things that our planner put there for us to review with the applicant. And you're on, my friend David.
Yeah, I don't think Mike is with us yet, but I can certainly explain that in this entire site slopes from Aquidneck Avenue to the rear. So all the stormwater runoff, and actually the entire site is located in zone 1. So there is no zone 2 on this site. The entire site is zone 1. So all runoff will be directed or is actually going to remain unchanged. So there's no change to the existing runoff patterns. So they'll continue to run from Aquidneck Avenue to the rear of the property as they currently exist.
Dave, Mike Russell just joined us, so he can repeat what you just said.
Okay. I was trying my best to
You're
engineer Mike and doing a poor job of it.
All right,
Turn it
so
over to the professional.
how do I dovetail into that? So I guess start back with Mr. Weber's question, just to generally describe the existing conditions relative to stormwater? Is that the,
Yeah, I guess,
is that the question on the table?
yeah, the easy thing is the planner gave us 3 things to ask you. And I guess my basic question is there any significant alteration or change to runoff now as currently exists?
No, I mean, these improvements are elevated above grade. So it's basically columns supporting the structure. And no other changes to the site are proposed.
And I think Spencer might have mentioned this. Is the ground underneath the decks impervious? Is that paved area?
Yeah, for pretty much. Yeah.
So you're not increasing the impervious area on the site.
No, that's not the intent.
Follow up on that, Paul?
Just a second, Bill. Mike, to follow up on Art's question, the question as posed by the planning department that we should ask said that the owner is required to comply with the provisions of the town's stormwater management ordinance and construction site runoff and erosion control. So the question is, are you in compliance?
I would say the site as it exists now is not in compliance. In my opinion, this improvement, this structural improvement to the building would not require, I don't see how it would require a stormwater improvement.
Mike, but during the construction phase, you were required to submit a stormwater or a construction site runoff and soil erosion control plan. Would that be correct?
Normally speaking, but there's other than, and I maybe Spencer could speak to this better than I could. They're not going to open up any ground here to do this. You know, if the columns, if the supporting columns to this upper level structure require excavation, it would be minimal, and it would be concentrated to the column. So to that extent, I think some precautionary erosion control measures could be put down at the perimeter to protect the pond, but there are no stormwater management components to protect right now. So you know, I just don't see where anything would be. You know, we're not adding any impervious area. We're certainly not adding to the degradation of surface runoff from what exists now. It's just there's some impervious area in the footprint of this upper level structure, and it will be covered by the upper level structure.
Bill and then Mike.
Yeah, thanks, Paul. So,
Okay.
So they may not be able to be, we certainly can't require it, but, and I know from a zoning standpoint, we're not looking at zoning, but it makes me a little bit uncomfortable to see a site plan with the parking laid out. And I'm not sure if the current site has enough parking or not. And I know that's not our purview, but I would just say that it's a little odd to see the existing deck, and not only does it show it on the site plan, but it showed it in the photos, existing parking spaces with deck poles in the middle of it. So without trying to relive sins of the past, how it might have gotten there, if there was a site plan issue, it certainly could have been addressed with parking area and the impervious surface that's currently over that couple of parking areas that render those spaces, I guess they can squeeze in there, but it just looks awkward to me. And I think when we talk about runoff, I mean, there are already parking spaces off of the property. I'm assuming there's an agreement on that. Again, not our purview, but just wanted to note that parking areas can be grassed over if necessary, if need be, for storm water management control. And, sins of the past sometimes creep up on us here, but it just looks awkward to me on the plan. And what really made me speak up is the photo that shows it just looks awkward. I certainly support the application. I support the improvements to the building. But I think that the parking should be corrected. I hope the zoning board takes that into account.
Mike?
Now, when I looked at the drawings, you mentioned that there's a roof over one of the decks or even a roof over the upper deck. Is that true?
There's a
Or is
roof
the-
over there's a roof over the first floor deck, the whole thing. Part of it is a deck for the second floor, and the other two are decks that flank it on either side. One's a shed and the other one's a gable roof.
So, so basically the water will run off those roofs. If one deck, if an upper deck is a roof for a lower deck, does the water just run through the upper deck down to the lower deck? Or
No,
is it,
it'll be a solid roof, a solid floor. So it'll all come out to the edge of the roof.
That was my point.
so so does that mean so now the water, instead of percolating through the deck, it can be directed off into a certain direction, right?
It could be collected in a gutter. Is that where you're getting at?
Yeah. So if you got an impermeable roof up there, the water could be directed off the roof, into a certain area, right?
It could be
Hopefully away
collected
from the pond, or hopefully in a way that could be percolated through the ground before it even reaches the pond.
I suppose we hadn't planned on a gutter system. We were just planning on shedding it off the roofs, and then it would drip on the parking lot.
The direction of the runoff doesn't change, irrespective of the roof. I mean, it's going to head to the rear of the property as it does now. There is no, so you're covering an impervious surface with an impervious surface. I guess the principal difference is that the roof water is in theory cleaner. The runoff is cleaner than that of pavement. So you're carrying less. So if rainwater is not going to hit the area below the roof, then it's not going to carry the typical pollutants, sediment, oils, grease, gas, antifreeze, that type of thing with it to the back of the property. So, but it's an impervious.
Could that water be directed to some sort of a cistern or something like that? Maybe you could put in a cistern and collect it, so it won't run down. It's a sizable enough area that you could probably collect enough of it and avoid all that just going over the surface parking lot down towards the pond.
Well, it's what to do with it. So if a cistern, the way I think of a cistern is a solid container, so the water is going to fill up very quickly, and then what to do with it? As far as a typical a dry well, I think the groundwater elevation there is too high to make that work. I mean, it's not that site is cut down considerably. From, just take Cumberland Farms, for example, that site had to get elevated in order to deal with that particular project. But down in the rear of the property, I would imagine that groundwater there is fairly near the surface.
Okay.
Before we have any further discussion on that, let me ask Ron, are they required to submit a stormwater management plan with this project? Because they would have to address these questions that are being asked in that plan.
Well, that's what I think David referenced. During the permitting process, they would be required to submit or comply with the town's ordinances, which is referenced in the recommended conditions as we normally put on Watershed Protection District 1 recommendations. They have to comply with chapters 151, which is erosion construction site runoff, and 153, which is stormwater management. So at that point in the permitting process, the building official and the town engineer will determine whether there's compliance and to what level of plans and documents need to be submitted. I think that's a discussion that they would have with Mike Russell and the applicant as to what's going to be required at that point.
So is the planning board simply responsible to make sure that the applicant is aware of that?
That's the main reason I think that we put that condition on all of our recommendations for zone 1, is to inform the applicant that they do have to comply with those 2 ordinances.
Okay, so consider yourself informed. On that second question there, the applicant is being asked to describe any potential sources of pollution, existing or proposed. Could you address that?
Well, I don't think we're proposing anything different than otherwise, presently exists for the restaurant use on the property. There's no change of use here. There's no ISDS system. Obviously, you do have cars coming and going from the property. And you've got the on-site stormwater, but there's no storage of hazardous wastes or things of that nature. It's just the restaurant use.
Yeah, and
I don't know, Mike, do you have anything to add to that?
I agree with you. I wouldn't have any more to add than that.
so my understanding is that the uses are not going to change.
That's correct. There's no change.
And the third question is that the applicant should be asked to describe how surface water will be directed away from zone 1 if possible. Can you comment?
Mike, before you joined or while you were joining, I was indicating that the entire site is in zone 1 and the topography of the site is such that all the water drains from Aquidneck Avenue toward the rear of the property. So it's all directed still within zone 1, and to direct it would not be feasible to direct it to zone 2. Would you?
Yeah, that's correct. Just the physical characteristics of the property would prohibit directing the stormwater elsewhere. It would be nice if you could, but there's no stormwater infrastructure in place now. As Dave mentioned, the site slopes from Aquidneck Avenue to the rear. And because of that grade change, there's no way to direct the water back towards Aquidneck Avenue, for example.
Any other comments from planning board members?
Yes.
Bill and then BJ?
So again, not to hop on the zoning, but I know you need to go to zoning and get a recommendation from us. But as I look at the proposal, it's for a minor expansion, I get it, of the second floor deck, and then an addition of 150 square feet. So that theoretically may kick in additional zoning parking requirements. And if you don't have parking, you need a variance for that. And if you don't have it, then, here we are granting a variance with potentially some runoff issues and exacerbating the parking issue. So those are my concerns as I see it.
Right, Mr. Nash, if I could address something you raised, just so that everyone's clear, and I don't want any misunderstanding. Ron, if you could pull up the site plan that was submitted. I think Mr. Nash referenced the sins of the past. These are certainly sins that predated my client's ownership of the property. And so you mentioned parking spaces being located off-site.
Well,
and those are parking spaces that you can C
Yeah.
located to the west, correct?
Sure, yes, Dave.
Yeah. So those parking spaces located to the west, where it shows the edge of pavement, those are actually on land of the city of Newport, of the water department. And I know that the board's received an objection that's been filed by the city relative to the petition. So prior to my client's ownership of this property, and for a period from what we can tell for at least 20 years, there has been parking associated with this property along the city property, and those spots have been used. We have filed the case in the Superior Court regarding those, and arguing that my client should be entitled to that area and that property by virtue of adverse possession. The Superior Court indicated in a ruling that it did not believe that a private citizen or entity could gain adverse possession over a municipality, even though the property is not owned in Newport, but in Middletown. And we've appealed that matter to the Supreme Court. And so that matter is still being presently litigated, but those parking spaces are not used under an agreement. I think, Mr. Nash, you had indicated that you thought there may possibly have been an agreement, and I just wanted to be clear that that's not the case. But it is a matter of litigation.
Yeah, Dave.
So
my point, thank you for the explanation. My only point on it is, though, as I see the expansion, and I know parking is a big deal, and I want to make sure, again, I want them to improve the property, but expansion of the property may kick in a requirement for additional parking spaces, which we are already maxed out. I get that. But here we are asked to give an opinion and look at the site plan for stormwater provisions and making sure there's compliance, and we don't even have that. And how you could fix it, I don't know. The answer to me would be fix up what you have and spend your money on improving the water quality / runoff conditions there, rather than get a 150 square foot addition for more potential spaces and tables. And again, I saw the photo, and that's what made me say it in the first place. And to me, it needs help. It definitely needs to be cleaned up, and I support that part of it. But the expansion, I'm struggling with right now.
And
I understand what you're saying, Mr. Nash. The 150 square foot third floor, the second story deck is really sort of a walkout area. Our client, Scott Kermel, Diego's, is reconfiguring that space up there. And, there was a variance granted by the city, by the town a number of years ago for a certain capacity. And through this process, and the reconfiguration of the top floor, the capacity is actually dropping. So, we're dealing with it in that fashion to lower the capacity, so that we're not running into any additional variances or things of that nature.
But let me just ask. I guess you brought it up. I brought it up, and then you followed up. I'll just ask: will you need a variance from parking for this?
No, we will not.
Okay, thank you.
BJ?
Yes, thank you very much. I agree with a lot of what Bill just said, and I do think that it'd be very interesting to see, should this go to the Conservation Commission or to the TRC? This is an opportunity, in my mind, to improve the conditions, particularly the runoff conditions, and improve the area as far as this issue is concerned, and it hopefully put in compliance with the town's stormwater management ordinance, which must be addressed. I think that should go back to the zoning board. That's my opinion.
Any other comments from members of the planning board? BJ, let me ask you, would you like that to be a condition on any motion that we make
Yes,
on this?
yes, please.
Okay.
Would you make that a condition?
Okay, so may I have a motion that we recommend to the zoning board of review that the application to construct a deck be allowed with the condition that water quality issues be addressed
Mhm.
and meet with compliance with town regs, town
Yes.
ordinances.
That's quality
Yes.
and quantity, right, Paul?
Whatever the town
Whatever the regs
ordinance
are.
calls for, yeah. Is that okay with
So-
everyone?
So Paul, on the memo, there are two recommended conditions, the number one being requiring compliance with the ordinances. So
Correct.
you may be repeating that thought that we already had in that draft condition.
Right.
Well, I certainly don't want to do that.
I just don't want to, add a third condition if it's just repeating another one.
Agreed.
Underline it.
All right, we can just say that the motion to make the recommendation to allow construction subject to the conditions on the July 1st memo.
Would
Is that okay with everyone?
Would that include a zoning board review, another zoning board review, or a conservation commission review?
I don't know.
Well, they're at zoning
Conservation.
now.
We are
Yeah.
asked to make a recommendation to the zoning board.
Yeah, Conservation Commission has received this as well.
Okay,
And BJ, there is no TRC review
Yes.
here.
Before we discuss further, may I have a second to the motion?
Second.
Thank you, BJ. Is there any discussion? Go ahead, Mike.
no, I support that motion.
Oh, okay. Any discussion on the motion?
Didn't you have a question? You mentioned something about,
No,
TRC?
BJ seemed to think there was going to be a TRC review here, but there is not.
right.
Yeah, that's what I was hoping maybe.
Well, I think the appropriate people are gonna end up seeing it, so I would be comfortable with that. And I do
Okay.
support the application for the improvements for sure. And I hope the zoning board takes into consideration that requirement and certainly enforces it to the level that we'd like to see it enforced at.
Actually, I would like to amend the motion that I made to include taking appropriate measures during construction that was discussed earlier. When we were when Mike was talking about if any footers are needed and earthwork is needed to take appropriate measures to prevent any runoff into the water, and I would add that condition. So may I have a second for the amended motion, please?
Second.
Thank you. Any further discussion on this? All those in favor, say aye. Show your hand, please.
Aye.
Hi.
Are there any opposed? Motion passes. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Next item on the agenda is item 5D. Request of Michael J. Richards Esquire, representing George P. Lewis Family Limited Partnership 3 for release of subdivision performance security for the Lewis Drive subdivision. Tax Assessors Plat 125, lots 947, 948, 949, 950, in accordance with section 703 of the Middletown Rule and Regulations regarding the subdivision and development of land. Is Mr. Richards here or?
Yes.
Good evening, Mr. Chair, members of the
Good
board.
evening.
Mike Richards,
Good evening.
represent the George P. Lewis Family Limited Partnership Third. This is approaching the goalpost of a long drawn-out project, looking for a recommendation of the planning board to release the security bond and accept Lewis Drive for maintenance by the town.
Are we dealing with these separately?
I have it on the agenda as two separate items. So the
Yeah,
first
so
item
let-
would be to release the performance security, and the second item would be a recommendation to the town council to accept the road for town maintenance.
Okay, let's deal with the first one first, and that is to address the performance security. Ron, could you give some background, please?
Sure. So the applicant was, as often happens in subdivisions, required to provide performance security to ensure that the required improvements were completed. We are now at a point, as Mike referenced, it's been a long road, but we are at the point now where the town engineer has signed off on the improvements. He still had a couple of remaining items. I believe you have a copy of his memo that he feels can be addressed with the maintenance bond that would be posted with the release of the performance bond. But generally, the town engineer is comfortable with the work that has been completed and is recommending that the performance bond be released.
Mr. Richards, do you have anything to add at this point?
Yes, we do accept the recommendations of Mr. Hall, and we appreciate them. I do want to bring to your attention the deficiency itemized as number 2. There's some scrapes on the asphalt berm on Lewis Drive, and if I could share my screen, I'd like to show you because where these scrapes are, they're de minimis, very much to begin so. But eventually where these scrapes on the Cape Cod berm are is more than likely going to be a curb cut for what a new house on Lewis Drive is going to be. So right where these issues are about these scrapes, it's going to be a heavy construction zone to build on the subdivided lot right adjacent to it. And more than likely it's going to be where a curb cut goes. So before my client or the town goes ahead and spends any money on fixing these scrapes, and I have them available, I can share my screen to show you what we're talking about. I just like a good faith investigation whether or not there's going to be a curb cut, really exactly where the Cape Cod berm that's being asked to be replaced is replaced. Can I share my screen to show you what scrapes we're talking about?
Of course, go ahead.
There it is. All right, do you see my screen?
No.
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 Okay.
There. Now it's come.
How about now?
Oh,
Yes.
yes, yes.
Okay, so
We've got you now.
so you'll see the area where my cursor is over is where these scrapes are. I'm about to show you. And just to the, I'm just going to call it the right of that is an easement berm that the town has rights to maintain a drainage runoff system. So in all likelihood, this is where a curb cut's going to be right next to Josh Mactaz's home here. And then if I can pull up what scrapes we're talking about. Now, do you see the Cape Cod berm now?
Yep.
Okay, so these are the types of scrapes we're talking about in the berm. So we're really just looking at that one, and this is an overall picture of it. So we've got this scrape, and this scrape is all we're looking at of a substandard condition. I don't know what level of perfection the town of Middletown's looking for, and if it needs to be replaced, my client's ready, willing, and able to get that replaced. But just before he spends any more money on replacing it, I think everybody should do a good faith investigation whether or not a curb cut's going to go exactly where this Cape Cod berm is minimally damaged. And that's my only comment on the release of the security bond.
Mr. Richards, did you discuss this with the town engineer?
With Mr. Warren Hall?
Yes.
Yes, we've discussed it at length with Mr. Warren Hall. He knows my position. His recommendation was still to have it remedied.
Can you show the site view again, the overview?
Yes. So right here is the area in question. And right here is a berm and a drainage easement here. So there's not going to be any real access to the lot from this area. It's going to come through here. But again, I don't know that for sure. And I don't know when that curb cut's going to be made, but I'd like to have the opportunity to investigate with counsel, the owner of that lot, see if any plans get submitted to the town of Middletown before we go ahead and cut up the asphalt and replace the berm. That all said, we still accept the recommendations of Mr. Hall.
And just so the board is clear, that recommendation from Warren is that this issue be resolved during the period of the maintenance bond, which runs from a year from the release of the performance bond. So I don't think you need to try to solve this right now, but I think it's good that Mr. Richards has raised the issue. And we can certainly, in the meantime, talk with Warren, maybe even talk with the property owner. As I think the board knows, that property was just recently subdivided. And perhaps talk with that property owner to get a feel from him as to what his development plans are, and answer that question that Mr. Richards is asking, is where is that driveway access point going to be? And if it's going to be at the location of where these scrapes are, then we can talk with Warren about that and get it resolved that way.
So would an appropriate motion here, Ron, be that we recommend that the performance security be released, subject to this issue getting resolved during the next year?
Well, it's sort of two separate things. The performance security, once you release that, it's gone. However, the applicant or the developer is required to post that maintenance bond, which is a separate instrument. So I guess your motion would be that the issue be resolved as part of the or during the period of the maintenance bond.
Okay, may I have such a motion, please? Anyone? Then I will make that motion. I make the motion that we recommend release of the bond and that this issue be addressed and resolved during the maintenance bond issue period.
I second that, Paul.
Thank you. A motion is made and seconded. Is there any discussion?
Question, Paul.
Yes, Bill.
The motion is clear. It's the 3 items on Warren's memo, right?
There's actually only 2 that remain from Warren's recommendations. The third one, Warren's advice is that issue is not something that needs to be resolved.
Okay.
So it's
I want to be clear on that.
yeah, so it's the shoulder. I mean, Mr. Richard just raised the issue with item number 2, which I
Right.
assume means that he's fine with item number 1 and making sure that gets resolved during the maintenance period. But if you want to have your motion include both 1 and 2, that makes
I want to be
sense.
clear on that.
Yep.
I will amend the motion to include 1 and 2.
Second. Oh, it's been seconded.
Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye. Show your hand, please.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes.
Thank you.
The next item on the agenda is item 5E, a recommendation to the town council regarding acceptance of Lewis Drive for town maintenance in accordance with section 703.5 of the Middletown Rules and Regulations regarding the subdivision and development of land. Mr. Richards.
I'm asking the planning board to accept the recommendation of Mr. Hall and recommend to the city council to accept this road for town maintenance. The only condition I'll raise is the town right now has $42,246.81. We're going to post a bond of $21,124.88. So we would just ask the town, and maybe this is more of a question for city council or the finance department, is to simply release the $21,121.93 and just retain that remaining balance as the town maintenance security bond for the period of 1 year. That's my only comment on it.
We can work with the finance office on that. I don't think that's something the town council needs to get involved with, but I don't see a reason that couldn't happen that way.
Thank you.
So, Ron, the town is supportive of this, turning over this road to the town for maintenance?
The planning board is being asked to give a recommendation to the town council. The town staff have signed off on it, yes.
They have, okay. So any discussion from members of the planning board? Art?
Well, I see that Warren has signed off on the bond. I don't see anything that says Warren Hall approves the road. So,
Well, that's a condition of releasing the performance bond, is that he is approving the project as completed, except for those minor items that he referenced.
well, I think to be absolutely correct, if we do this in the future, there should be a sign off signifying that the bond is satisfied and the road is good to go. That would make sense to me, but
A more clear recommendation or memo, that's fine. Yeah, we can ask Warren to do that.
the bond is cool and the road is good. I think that would probably get it.
Works for me.
Okay.
Thank you, everyone.
Interpretation.
Any other comments from the planning board? May I have a motion to recommend to the town council that they accept Lewis Drive for town maintenance?
So moved.
Second.
Motion is made and seconded that the town accept Lewis Drive for town maintenance. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor say aye. Show your hand, please.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion passes. Thank you, Mr. Richards.
Thanks for your time. Have a nice evening.
Next item on the agenda is item 5F. Discuss the town council referral back to the planning board of the proposed Atlantic Beach District overlay zoning and process for reconsideration. Before I open it up, Art, I know you spoke at the meeting. I missed the beginning of the meeting, but I went back and watched the video of the meeting, so I saw all of the discussion on this. Seems to me there were two primary issues that were being discussed. One was the issue of hotels or hotel rooms, and the other was potential impacts on existing businesses. That's what I heard. Art, would you like to add anything? I know you watched the meeting and participated in the discussion.
yes, I watched this and here's the problem I have. And it irritated no end. There was a person who has property there who was vociferous in protests that no one knew about this project, that people that live there never received notices that abutters receive when items are being considered, particularly in the case when we had 2 public workshops on this project. Now, it turns out, as far as I know, and I think Ron helped me out with this,
Mhm.
this gentleman that was protesting was actually at the workshops.
Yeah.
And if that's the case, I'm going to be kind here. He was not telling the truth. And the town council based referring this back to us again on that information that people were not noticed, apparently, and we're supposed to do it again. And I think about several things. Yogi Berra used to say, it's deja vu all over again, or we're with Tom Hanks and it's Groundhog Day. I think we have done our due diligence in this with the subcommittee that put this use table together, the planning board that put the whole thing together, and we had 2 public workshops on this. To refer it back and redo it again, to me, it doesn't make any sense. And again, I think the town council was mistaken when they heard information from this man, which is incorrect. And that's what they're basing their referral to us on. And I would be very comfortable sending it back to the council, saying the same thing I just told all of you. The information they received was absolutely bogus. Procedures were followed, information was received, and decisions were made by this board, and to get it moved along. And the other thing that is a problem for me is if you look at the date the planning board certified this project complete, and the time it took to get to the town council is totally unacceptable. That's it.
by the way, I don't disagree with anything you said, Art, but I think we have to respond to what the town council is asking us to do. Any other comments from other members? Bill?
Yeah, I agree with Paul. I don't disagree with what you're saying. It's frustrating. We do our work, we do our due diligence, and then we're at the whim of one property owner who alleges one thing, and it may or may not have been the truth. I don't disagree with that. It's frustrating, but I think this is the nature of business owners and boards and the work that we do. And I think, we can play tit for tat with the council and give it back to them. And as much as I want to agree with you and just say, here you go, it's yours again, they're going to turn around and give it back to us and say, no, you got to have a hearing, you got to do something. So unfortunately, I think we need to do something to appease the council, or we're going to keep doing this round and round we go dance until it ends. And rather than fight it, let's go with it and get it done. He may or may not show up, but at least we can say we've done what they've asked us again, and we can move this thing forward. If we keep going back and forth, it's just going to delay it further. So I feel your pain. Believe me, I want to agree with you, but I think we need to move it.
By the way, one good thing that was done was that they did not just send this back to the planning board. What they did was they referred it back for consideration, but they kept their public hearing open on the second reading. So I'm assuming when we send it back to them, it will go back to the public hearing on the second reading. So that will help move it along once we get it back to them.
Well, if I could recommend,
go ahead, Art.
I suppose we have to go through this exercise again. Okay, but I would be very, very interested in putting a cover memo on it, going through just what I said. In spite of blah, 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 we are going to have another public workshop and everybody's going to be noticed and we're going to do the process again. So, but somebody needs to be put on call here for information that was provided to the town council erroneously and they're acting upon it. I don't think this guy should get off scot-free on this. This is not the way ethical people do things. And he needs to be called out as for what he is.
When we send this back to the council, I will consider suggestions for the cover memo.
I'll just say along those same lines, Art, this dance that we do, back and forth, council planning, this is not the first issue this has happened with. We've had things thrown back to us for lesser reasons, frankly. And that's frustrating to do that. That's why the process of having one hearing, get it done, keep it open. Boy, this just makes government look bad when we have to continue to go back and forth, and it frustrates me as well, but it's just the nature of the beast, I guess.
So go ahead, Joe.
So I got in late on that town council hearing on this issue, and but I did listen to most of it and then went back and played what I missed. Yeah, it is frustrating for sure. My recommendation, rather than kind of arm wrestle town council, would be to make a recommendation. Would be to have maybe a really narrow scope in another public workshop where we specifically kind of dive into the issues that were raised, use and on hotels. And, rather than open up a whole Pandora's box, just focus on it that way. And then make a recommendation back to the town council based on one more. And if we know who this individual is, make sure that person is in attendance.
That's why I mentioned, hold on, Bill. That's why I mentioned the 2 points that seem to be discussed were hotels and the impact on business. I think we should address those 2 topics and then make our recommendation back. Go ahead, Bill.
Yeah, just one more thing. Maybe in that cover memo that Art suggests when we correspond back, let's invite the council to come and watch this public input. We don't do enough of that. These people come out, and business owners, yes, to their defense here, they're busy, but so are we. But they have to go out, and then they don't hear all of the comments that happened at our public meeting, our workshop, and then they want to try to revisit it. I've seen this happen time and time again with a lot of different issues. Let's invite the council, and they may or may not take us up on it, but I think we need to be active in that respect and invite the council members to come to the public meeting and listen in on what the residents are hearing, rather than have to do it again 2 months later.
Ron, do they receive notice of our meetings? Town council?
I don't typically provide special notice to them, but they're aware of the notices that are posted, I believe, but we can certainly.
I mean, there was a time when they showed up regularly at our meetings.
Yes.
Yeah, we can certainly make sure that they receive a copy of the notice for
Yeah,
this.
I rather than give them a special invitation, I think we should just send a notification to them.
That's what I
let
mean.
them
Yes,
come if
something
they
to that
want.
effect. Yes.
Go ahead, John. John and then Art.
Thank you very much. Bill, that's a great idea. I wholeheartedly agree with that, having them invite them to attend the hearing. A lot of work was put into this between Art, you and myself. And and to have one person have it kick back is very, very frustrating. So if we can invite the council to see what we go through and have the public testimony, I think we can put an end to it right there and get it remanded back, and case will be closed. That's a great idea, inviting the town council. Thank you.
Art?
Yes, I received a memorandum from John Bagwell, and I think I forwarded it to everybody.
Couldn't open it, Art. To me, it wasn't an attachment.
I didn't see it, Art.
Okay, well, I'm not sure I still have it on my computer, but he proposed an outline to approach this if we go back to it. And one of the things that was very important for him, and I think we're on the right length here, we need to go back and tell them where this idea came from and when it came, develop the historical perspective on it, and the fact that it's sitting big, fat, dumb, and happy in our comprehensive plan. People need to be reminded about that and check it out. And he thought everybody from the town council should be in their little chairs when we go through our workshop, and we can do a preemptive beginning like Ron so ably does most of the time when he sets the scene. So I'm surprised nobody got that, but I'll see if I can resend it to you. But that's I think that's important, that the town council be part of it and they hear the story from the beginning, so they know the history and
Agreed.
who we are.
Agreed. Absolutely.
I may be off base, but I think that would be throwing salt in their face to do that.
Well, they should come listen and find out what's going on and where it comes from.
You know,
They used to, Paul. They used
a
to.
lot of the people on the council have been involved with this from the beginning as well. They know what's going on.
Not the new guys.
Well, I don't have a problem with going, providing a brief history in our workshop. I think that's good no matter what we do or who's there or whatever. But to specifically do it for the town council, I think is not.
No, they come as part of the workshop. Now, one of the town council people said, gee, I don't know much about this. So, you know.
Paul, Chris McNally has a question.
Yeah, if I may, everyone, what
yeah,
we're
I
really
see your
talking
hand.
about.
Sorry, Chris. I didn't.
No, that's all right. I just, using one, I'll take it down. What we're really talking about here is making sure that we have a sufficient record that can be referred back to in the event the town is facing any litigation, which hopefully is not the case. So the notion of having a memo that captures the history of this particular overlay zoning district and making that readily available, coupled with rehearing it so that we fully, maybe redundantly satisfy the public hearing requirement, it makes sense to do. Bill, your point of let's just do it, make sure it's covering all of our bases. It's belt and suspenders, but it's better to have a thorough and public record than to not and expose the town to any potential litigation down the road. So a memo and the hearing to air it out again is probably a good course of action.
Well, I don't think anyone disagrees with that, Chris.
Despite,
the only issue is how we approach it and so on. Somebody had their hand up?
I did.
Yes, go ahead, Joe.
I just want to go on the record and say, for those of you that weren't listening in on that, how what a magnificent job, Ron, you and Rita did in presenting the overview, and Rita, you on the use tables. I was really, really proud to be a planning board member and listening to our planner and our principal planner. You guys deserve tremendous credit. That was so much work. So I think you guys absolutely deserve a round of applause.
Couldn't agree more. Absolutely, Joe. Excellent.
I appreciate that, Joe. So, I mean, back to that point, though, I would anticipate for this workshop doing a similar presentation right at the beginning, get everybody on the same page, as as everyone has already mentioned, a little bit of history, get people up to speed on where this came from, back to the Atlantic Beach Master Plan, and then of course we can do a very similar presentation on the components of the proposed ordinance, and that will be a good starting point. Open it up to the public and see where it goes.
Ron, what kind of notification do we do? Are we officially notifying people? Are we putting this in the paper? What kind of notification happens?
It'll definitely go in the paper. This is not the formal public hearing, so to speak, that the council has currently opened. So there isn't any legal requirement in terms of advertising or notice, but we would certainly probably use the same notice that we used, or that the council used for its hearing, which is everybody within the district, the proposed district, and property owners within 200 feet of the boundaries of the proposed district. But it would be advertised on the website. Any other suggestions people have for getting the word out there? Open to that.
Get Matt Shearley to do a piece on it. Matt would be the perfect one to do it.
Yep.
It's a good idea.
All right.
Well, I think we're going to have to do this as a separate standalone.
Yeah, I would suggest that, Ron, that you send out a doodle poll to set up a meeting, and let's do it as soon as possible so we can get this back to the town council as soon as possible.
Absolutely. So we just want to make sure we, give a couple of weeks notice to folks. So I'll get the poll out tomorrow to you all. And once we have a date selected, like I said, give a couple of weeks for the advertising and the notice, so people can't say that they didn't have enough time to hear about it.
Any other comments? We're all set going forward? Very good. Anything else on that item, or can we move on? Let us move on. Okay. The next item is 6 updates. Does anyone have any comments on the project update memo? I just have a couple that I would like to raise. Ron, has the town, this is on the one on affordable housing, has the town council done anything to get the planning board involved with their committee?
I think they're still in the process of creating the Affordable Housing Committee. So I'll check with Wendy Marshall again to see where they are with making the appointments. But the thinking was that once they have that committee up and running, that we would reach out to them and maybe have a joint meeting or something, because it is a joint concern of the planning board in terms of implementing recommendations from the comprehensive plan, and then of course this new committee.
So at one point, there was a suggestion of putting a planning board member on the committee, but you think they will just have a joint meeting with the planning board?
I don't know what the council decided in terms of membership and whether it was going to include a planning board member. I don't think that happened. So it would be probably a joint meeting would be the best way to go.
Okay. All right. When I looked over this list, I didn't see anything on the mixed use ordinance, Ron. What is the status of that?
There's nothing happening right now. What did you have in mind?
Well, they rejected it, but they never, at one of their meetings, they said they were they would give the planning board feedback so we could take appropriate action to rectify whatever they didn't like about it, but we have received no feedback from them.
Well, I think if the planning board wishes to take up the ball again on that and see if there's recommendations you wish to make to the council for amendments, and you're correct that the amendments that were sent forward before were not accepted, the board can certainly do that.
Could I ask that that be put put on the agenda for our next meeting, please?
Sure. Yep.
Paul,
Yes, Art, go ahead.
the only thing I heard through the grapevine, there was some kind of problem with operating hours, and
Yeah, right.
I thought we had gone through that carefully because it's obvious if you've got commercial units there and people live there, you're not going to have guys delivering donuts at 0200, you know?
Yeah, so it should be a relatively easy fix. So let's put it on the agenda and make some changes and send it back to them.
Okay.
And I think we did mention that when we had our joint meeting with the council.
We
that-
did, and they said, that's when they said they would send us some feedback, but we haven't got any. Okay, those are that's all I have on the project update. Committee reports, airport overlay zoning, Joe?
Well, a couple of things. We have the next subcommittee meeting scheduled for July 26th, 2 to 3 o'clock. So that's been set. Thank you, Rita. And then one of the big items that came out of one of the last meetings was there were a bunch of questions that were asked and they were put to Chris McNally regarding impacts of what was proposed. And I know, Chris, you responded, looking at the email right now. They were basically 3 main questions. What's the town's liability if it does not adopt? Consequences from the state if we do not adopt? And then does the town need to compensate landowners, right? So
Correct.
we've got answers to that stuff or those questions. And I think with that, armed with that information, we're ready to have our next meeting.
Very good, very good. Use table and parking ordinance combined?
Yeah. So can I just back up for a sec, Joe? Are you meeting Zoom wise?
Yeah.
To Zoom. Yeah, we haven't really kind of ironed that out yet, have we? Meeting in person for the planning board itself, but secondarily subcommittees. And on that note, to kind of tie it all together, the parking and the use table we're going to combine, if we discussed that last time, right, Ron and Rita?
Right.
I think?
Yes, yes.
So,
Yep.
So we need to schedule. I'd like to do it in person if we can, but if not, we'll do it Zoom. So, yeah.
All right, we'll
Okay,
go
good.
ahead and get that scheduled, and just on the executive order, the governor's executive order, the current order expires next Friday, the 23rd. There was discussion that he wasn't going to extend it again, but then I heard contrary information. So I think, and this has come up in other committees too, where people are getting really frustrated not being able to meet in person. So we can talk, even if the executive order isn't extended into next month, we can talk about if the board wants to do a hybrid style meeting, a regular planning board meeting for August, we can talk about doing that. And that would be similar to what the council does, which is the members meet in person, but we have to have the public available or able to access the meeting via Zoom. It's a little more complicated, a little more cumbersome, but if that's, if something the board wants to do, we can do that.
I think for the purpose of the subcommittee meeting, can't we just schedule it as a Zoom meeting, and then if the governor's order is terminated, then we can change it to an in-person meeting?
Sure. Yep.
That's August 6th.
But can't we do up in the conference room like we always have, and have a computer with a webcam and address anybody that wants to call in?
Yes, well, that's what I'm saying. We could do that. It gets a little complicated technology wise, and we would need the assistance of the IT staff to get that going. But if that's what you want to do, we can do that.
I'd like to try that, Ron. I would. I want to get this meeting going. I want to get started, and I'll be diligent about getting a meeting. But I'd like to give that a good attempt to say, hey, look, we can do this. You know, I know it might take a little work, but I'd like to give it a shot.
Okay.
Tree Commission, BJ?
Yes, thank you. I'm going to take you to Forest Avenue School, where there was a tree planting initiative it was supported by Agway, Blooms, Boulevard Nursery, Hugendorns, and the Tree Commission. And the kids had a great hand in this, and there were a number of trees that had been planted, and they had something called the facility managers. And the planting that went on, Tom Welch was able to get the tree for them for $200 from Hugendorns, from his landscaping account. And then it was split. The Tree Commission paid for part of it, and the rest was paid for also. And each tree had a sign with the species name, and the kids were very excited about it. And it was an initiative to get the kids involved in the environment.
Sounds great.
So they're busy.
Thank you, BJ. Open Space and Fields?
Yeah, it looks like Middletown was awarded an $80,000 grant for Valley Trail expansion. So I guess the committee is going to be looking at, what the options are for where the expansion should take place and how it might affect new entrances into the trail. So they'll be looking at that at their upcoming meeting.
That'll be great. It's a great place now.
Yeah.
Conservation Commission, Joe?
We had a Conservation Commission meeting, 5:30 this past Monday evening. We had a couple of continuances. Main one being that green energy solar development on West Main Road. They're sorting out easements, sewer easements and stuff like that with, I guess, the solicitor. The compost, one compost subdivision that we continued tonight was on the agenda. It was presented. It's pretty technical. BJ, earlier you had recommended, or somebody had a site visit there.
Yes.
I actually went and drove it the other day and kind of walked it myself after the hearing. It's a pretty complicated site.
It is.
It's got some, it's got some major impacts that we're going to need to certainly investigate. So anyways, the long and short of that presentation was they have technical review committee and some other. So it was basically continued for another 30 days until we get feedback from planning board and TRC and our town engineers.
Yeah. And Ron, that's the one you're going to set up a site visit for the planning board, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Yep.
So anyways, it's all good. I got the planning board covered multiple ways.
Good. That's good, Joe. BJ, you had a question?
One of the things that I was concerned about is that this property is right on the Maidford River. So I think we have to be extremely careful. And I can remember when it came before us, it seems to me, what, a year, 2 years ago, 3 years ago?
Yeah, it was a while ago.
Yeah, a long time ago. And it seemed to me they reduced the number of lots that they wanted to have. And I can't remember the exact numbers now. But one of the lots, I don't know which one, but is very close to wetlands. I'm very concerned about the Maidford River. So that's all I have to say. And thank you, Joe, for your help.
Anyways, yeah.
Anything else, Joe, on Conservation Commission?
No.
Okay, so our next meeting is August 11th, and I guess Ron is going to be sending out some doodle polls to set up a couple of meetings for us.
And we have the August 17th special meeting now.
Yeah.
On the Haran subdivision.
Yes, so we have quite a few meetings in front of us.
Yep.
Any other comments that anyone wishes to bring before the board this evening? Well, somebody already mentioned it before, but I will repeat, thanks to Ron and Rita for the great support you give us, not only on Atlantic Beach District, but every project. It's absolutely super, and we appreciate it very much.
Thank you, Paul. I appreciate that.
Any other comments? May I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Second? Motion's made and seconded to adjourn. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Anyone opposed? The meeting is adjourned. Thank you all very much.
Thank you,
all.
everybody.
Thank you, guys. Thank you.
Good night.